Your vegan lasagna absolutely sucks, but that's okay. No longer do you have to suffer through making boring, bland, absolutely tasteless lasagna. My name's Darren with Vegan 604, and today we are going to be making the absolute best lasagna that you've ever tasted. You know, being vegan, we suffer so much. We don't get to enjoy dishes that we grew up with. We don't get to enjoy dishes like mom used to make because, well, of one key ingredient missing. But that doesn't mean that you have to live that way forever. And in today's video, I'm going to share with you my absolute favorite vegan lasagna recipe. I've got to give a shout out to Gaz Oakley, who helped inspire this dish, and I'm going to put a link below in the description to his channel. You're definitely going to want to check him out. Now, I've put my own special touches on this dish, and you're absolutely going to love it. It is the most mouth-watering, delectable, delicious, cheesy vegan lasagna that you're likely ever gonna have. And one of the best parts is, well, it's healthy too. Now, in this video, you're gonna notice that the portions are absolutely huge, and there's a reason for this. In the description, you're gonna find the entire recipe as well as all of the ingredients and the measurements used in today's dish. However, you know this, if you're vegan, that sometimes, well, cooking healthy or cooking really nice dinners or lunches or whatever that may be, it can be a lot of work. So if something freezes well, it's always smart to double it up. And this recipe certainly does freeze well, so I'm going to recommend you double it up, pop one in the freezer, and you can enjoy it with your family another night later on. You're gonna wanna make sure you subscribe to this channel because you're not gonna wanna miss out on any of the incredible dishes we're making on a regular basis. And these aren't test recipes that we're making. These are dishes that my friends and family absolutely love. So if you're subscribed to the channel, you're gonna get updated on a regular basis with some of our best recipes coming forward for you. And if you have friends or family members that have a tough time putting recipes together for you because you're vegan, well, make sure you like or share this video to help other people just like you have delicious lasagna so they don't have to live with shitty, brutal lasagna any longer. Anyways, if that all sounds good, let's get into the recipe right now. Like any good cooking adventure on the weekend, I like to start by having my favorite beer nice and close to me, and in this case, it's one of my all-time favorites, Dark Matter by Hoyne Brewing out of Victoria. This is an absolutely delicious beer, and it is going to be a big part of our cooking adventure this evening. So anyways, let's get started. We're going to dive right into this vegan lasagna, and first things first, prep is everything. I like to get all of my ingredients out and ready before starting. Now, the fresher the ingredients, the better, and if you can shop local, you're winning. Now, quick note, today's recipe has two little twists. Normally, I'd use eggplant in this recipe, but the store was completely out of it, nowhere to be found. So we're switching it up with potatoes. And trust me, this substitution is going to work beautifully. The other thing that you're going to notice is we are doing some pretty major portions in the video here, which aren't necessarily going to match what you're going to see for the recipe in the description. And that's really because that this freezes well, as mentioned earlier. So we're going to double it up. We're going to make two batches. So all the portions you're seeing in the video are doubled up portions. All right, let's get started. We're gonna start with our bechamel sauce. In goes some creamy soy milk, which is my favorite for its high protein content. Next, I'm gonna slice some onions, and no need to go too precise here. They're just infusing the milk with their flavor. This is all about building layers, not perfect cuts. Into the pot with the onions, I'm adding a pre-prepped spice mix. I've got bay leaf, nutmeg, sea salt, white pepper, and the MVP of vegan cooking, nutritional yeast. Give it a good stir and set it over a low heat, and you're gonna let those flavors work their magic while we move on. Next, we're gonna prep the veggies. Now, for the veggies, first, we've got some celery. And I'm not gonna worry about slicing these too fine for today's dish because I'm gonna pop them into the food processor because I'm doubling the batch, and that's gonna really help us out later and save us some time. So into a bowl, the celery goes, and next up is the red onion, another vibrant, flavorful addition. Same deal, rough chop, then we're gonna toss the scraps into a compost or into our loamy for some really lovely high quality soil to be used in the garden later on. Garlic is next, and I'm not holding back. A little extra garlic never hurt anyone. It's the secret to an unforgettable ragu. And lastly, a few tablespoons of rich tomato paste to join in the mix. Now, normally I'd throw this into the pan in advance, but because we're going to be mixing it all together, it doesn't hurt just to plop it on top, and we'll give it a good stir. Now, before moving on, I check the bechamel. Here's a pro tip. Stir it often to prevent it from sticking to the bottom of the pan, and it's already looking and smelling incredible. On to our ragu, the heart of our lasagna.
We're gonna heat up a big pot until it's sizzling. Here's where I made a little oops. It got way too hot and the oil started smoking. So the quick fix was I turned down the heat and we're right back on track. Once the pot is ready, in goes the olive oil, then the celery, the onion, the garlic, and the tomato paste. While the ragu's getting started, normally I'd start on the eggplant, but since we're using potatoes, I'm going to cut them up and blanch them a little bit in the microwave first to soften them up. I normally would recommend leaving the eggplant towards the end anyways, because you don't want it to start to turn brown on you. It's not a very nice sight and doesn't look good. So if you're using eggplant, just keep it till the end. While that's happening, I chop zucchinis into bite-sized pieces. Zucchini adds the perfect crunch and a slight sweetness to this dish, one of my favorite parts of the dish altogether. Looking good. And of course, mushroom. Whether it's cremini, portobello, or shiitake, I'm using cremini here. They add an earthy richness, and it's an absolute must in this dish. I blitz them lightly in the food processor and toss them in with the zucchini and the potatoes. Give it a good stir to coat everything up into that rich tomato base. And of course, it's not a tomato base until we add our chopped tomato. But before it's ready to go, it's seasoning time. I go for salt, I go for some pepper, and a generous tablespoon of Italian seasoning. We're gonna let this simmer under a lid for a few minutes, stirring it occasionally to keep things from sticking to the bottom. And here's a game changer, a splash of balsamic vinegar. We're gonna borrow the acid from the balsamic vinegar to help deglaze the pan and get some of those stuck little bits off the bottom. Now here I ran out of balsamic vinegar, so I'm using my second favorite ingredient, or really maybe my first, red wine if you have it, which is really gonna boost the flavor and help deglaze the pot as mentioned. Finally, 2 cans of chopped tomatoes joined into the mix. We're going to stir this really well to make sure it's all together properly. We're going to put the lid back on and we're going to let it simmer on low for about 15 minutes. All right, back to the bechamel. In another pan, I melt the vegan butter, but here's where it went a little sideways again. I got distracted and the stove was far too hot and the butter started smoking. If this happens to you, just lower the heat and keep going. I whisk in the flour and whisk it really well, cooking it for a few minutes to get rid of that raw taste. You want to make sure you cook the flour very well. And in the background, you'll see that I am now straining the onions and the spices out from the milk. Then, little by little, I'm starting to add the infused milk to the whisked flour, whisking it constantly to keep it nice and smooth. And as you'll see, it's starting to turn into a really creamy, dreamy, cheesy sauce. For protein, I'm going to use some seasoned black beans instead of the vegan mince. They're creamy, hearty, and packed with fiber. For the second lasagna, I am going to use some vegan mince, some stuff that I did have in the freezer. Now, I've made this with Beyond Meat, I've made this with Impossible, and both are absolutely unbelievable. I just wanted to try and stay away from processed stuff as much as possible, so that's why I started with the black beans and the Eve's vegan mince. Now for the absolute best part. Assembling the lasagna. We're getting close here, folks. I start with a generous layer of the ragu, followed by a smooth layer of the bechamel. Then comes some oven-ready lasagna noodles. No pre-cooking required, which is a huge lifesaver for time. And this is a time-consuming dish, but believe me, it's worth it. For the second lasagna, it's going to freeze perfectly for us to enjoy another evening. So that's great. Layer by layer, we're going to build this lasagna. We're going to add more ragu. We're going to add more bechamel, we're going to add more noodles, protein, and we're going to repeat this until the dish is full to the brim. On the very top, once we're about to wrap up, I'm going to spread the remaining bechamel and finish with a sprinkle of vegan mozzarella that I had in the fridge for that gooey, cheesy touch. Since I preheated the oven to 350 degrees, into the oven it goes. And we're not going to put any foil on top. This is going to let the lasagna lose some of its liquid and firm up beautifully. After about 45 minutes, it's ready to come out. It's golden, bubbly, and smells absolutely heavenly. But wait, we do need to let it rest under foil for about 15 minutes. Trust me, this step is absolutely crucial for a lasagna that holds its shape and isn't super watery. Finally, after 15 minutes is up and the house smells unbelievable, it's time to serve. Each slice is a masterpiece. It's gooey, it's cheesy, it's bursting with flavor. The zucchini adds a hint of sweetness. The black beans go really well, bringing in some creaminess with the ragu being rich and savory. The bechamel, well, it's silky, cheesy perfection thanks to the nutritional yeast and the vegan mozzarella we added. This lasagna is not just for dinner, it's a celebration. It's healthy, it's hearty, and it's full of love. You want to top it with some fresh basil, and then afterwards grab a fork and enjoy every single bite. Let me know in the comments how yours turned out, and I'll see you in the next video.